Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and what exactly does that even mean? I mean, I've started all my videos with that, but what exactly is my job here? I mean, yes, technically it's Magic Principal Designer, but what does that mean? What would you say it is you do here, And that's a fair question. I'm starting my 14th year here on Magic, and I work my way all the way up from an intern to where I am today. And what I did 6 years ago and what you know me from back then might be a lot different from what I'm doing today. Based on what a lot of you see, I think it's kind of imagined that Magic's made like in a garage by me and Mark Rosewater, and maybe Aaron Forsyth shows up sometimes. But that really couldn't be further from the truth. Let me break it down and how me and Mark are a lot different too. Okay. So I work at Wizards of the Coast, the company that makes games like Magic the Gathering and Dungeons & Dragons, among others. Yeah, I bet you got that. And in particular, I work in an organization called Studio X that pretty much covers the creation of everything involving tabletop magic, from card design all the way to the packaging you see on the shelf. You might wonder where the name Studio X even came from. Well, several years ago, we merged several groups together. For example, what was formerly known as R&D got merged in here into a studio to help create better connections between each different group, among other reasons. Well, it was nicknamed Studio X until we could come up with a real better name. But the problem was, Studio X was kind of just cool, so it just stuck, and here we are all these years later as Studio X. Anyway, within the studio there are many different teams, from world building to editing to production, and I sit on the game design team. We're in charge of the abilities, mana cost, power toughness, and other things that pertain to gameplay. But not the names or flavor text or most creature types, that's on the world building and editing side. Okay, makes sense? Now let's talk about how game design works. Making a Magic set takes many years, but there are three main major phases of any given Magic set. There's exploratory and vision design, which is when a team is assembled to create the set from scratch. Usually these teams are between 4 and 6 people. Very few cards made at this stage will actually see final print, but they provide sort of a template and direction for the next team to follow. Monastery Mentor, a card I made and am very proud of, is actually a very rare card to survive basically unchanged from vision design all the way through, but really in every set, it's probably fewer than 10, if not fewer than 5 cards that make it all the way from vision through the end of the set design process. But it's super useful. It's what the set design team will look at and slowly mold into the final set, which is what happens in the next phase. The set design team is a different group of people, usually once again about 4 to 6 people or so, and set design is the longest part of the process. And this is once again where that set file really begins to take shape. Mechanics are honed, draft archetypes are built out, and so on. It's at this stage that kind of the big ice block of the set gets chiseled away slowly to become what looks like actually a Magic set. Then, after a long while in set design, we hit play design. The set design lead works with the whole play design team, whose job it is to do focus testing as they all do a ton of booster drafts and play with the set in constructed formats. And simultaneously, casual play design is doing the same with Commander, playing these cards in Commander decks. The cards really get put through their paces here and do everything from tiny adjustments, hey, let's change the toughness, all the way to, hey, this card's not really working, let's do a full-on redesign. So a lot can still happen here in the play design phase. Now, it's a little more nuanced than that, but that's the broad strokes that gets at the core of the process, I'd say. Okay, now hold all that in your head and let's talk about Commander decks. When Commander decks are attached to a set, they generally kick off around the time set design is beginning. That way they know what the mechanics and the themes are so they can implement them in the decks. They sometimes technically get a vision period, but usually the same lead designer goes all the way from vision through the end of the process for a Commander deck, so it stays pretty consistent. And if you're designing mini decks, you get one person per deck on your team, so each person kind of gets to lead a deck with one lead running the whole show. And then similarly, after that whole process, the last phase is putting them through their paces in casual play design again. Gotta get those cards just right. Got that in your head? Well, here is a big question, one that I'm asked a lot. How is what Mark Rosewater do and I do any different? Am I gonna take over his job one day or something? What's the deal there? Actually, we do very different things. Mark is really focused on the early part of the process. He spends the vast majority of his design time focused on main sets, on the vision and exploratory portion. He gets new ideas set up for success with mechanics and the bones of what makes it work, and he's very, very good at it. But a lot of it is still focused on that vision and exploratory portion. I, on the other hand, do very little on the vision design side. Occasionally I'll be on a team, but I spend the majority of my time focused on the set design of main sets and commander deck design when it comes to game design. Now we both do a lot with the community, so it makes sense why I think we do very similar things, and I'll get into that later. But these are very different pieces of the design process. Mark and I work on pretty different things. Okay, so now let's zoom in on commander form. I don't lead every deck, far from it. We have a fantastic group of designers leading the design of these decks. What I do though is help lead the entire group of commander deck designers. This means that I help set the design vision for what best practices for designing cards for Commander look like, big picture items, process improvements, Commander initiatives we want to try, and many things along those lines. I tackle the more overall direction of Commander design, and then Melissa DeTora, my counterpart, keeps the eye on kind of the final card design game balance part of things a little more than I do. So to give you a picture of just some things I've worked on recently, I led set design for Final Fantasy after Yanni Skolnick handed off the vision design to me, and I'm so excited for it. I cannot wait for you all to see the set. I led the design of the playtest cards for Mystery Booster 2 and provided the direction for what the main set should look like, although I didn't design the main set myself. I led the 4 Murders at Karlov Manor commander decks with a team of 3 other people, each one taking a deck and me kind of managing the entire group. The other commander releases last year, like Bloomburrow and Duskmourn, those were led by someone else. In the case of Bloomburrow and Duskmourn, Annie Sardellis. But I was still involved in playtesting them, reviewing cards, providing feedback, and so on. Many commander-wide design initiatives are things that I help make happen. For an example I've talked about before, we've been trying to make more cards in commander decks that are good in specific strategies, but less generically strong cards to prevent deck homogeneity. That's something I helped espouse and push for. Now, these are me-specific things. There's also some tasks like reviewing cards in upcoming sets and giving feedback that we kind of just do on a regular basis that most designers do. Okay, so that's what I do on the Magic design side. So what I'm working on right now, you might wonder? Well, I'm working on a booster set, which I can't tell you anything about, but it's going to be awesome, and I'm really excited about it. And I'm also working on a commander release, which once again, I can't tell you anything about, but I'm also very excited for it, and I can't wait for you to check it out when it comes out someday. So now let's look at some other areas. So one place that definitely touches design is my work on these format panels, the Pauper format panel and the Commander format panel, respectively. I'm a huge fan of Pauper, maybe the biggest in all of game design. And so when we were forming the Pauper format panel, it made a lot of sense to be the liaison to that team. Similarly, with Commander, at Wizards, I kind of lead the vision for Commander design, so it made a lot of sense for me to be the kind of Wizards liaison on that panel as well. It's a pretty natural extension. And both groups are pretty active, so I'm in there all the time. On the Pauper front, we're talking every week about cards and decks and the metagame and what we might want to change going forward and how things are looking, so that's a pretty active discussion. And then on the Commander side, things are pretty active too. We're talking all the time, and we have some upcoming plans I can't talk much about quite yet, but there is something coming in the not too distant future to stay tuned for. Another area I spend time working on is the events side. For example, at our MagicCons, which are awesome. If you haven't been to one yet, you should definitely try and go. I do a lot of panels there. For example, I'll do things from the preview panel to Game Nights Live to even Chaos Draft live on stage, which was a lot of fun. I also run the unknown events, which are these special events that happen at these shows that I make these playtest cards for. So I'm kind of in charge of the unknown event design, as it were, leading the set, so creating the new playtest cards and helping figure out what it's going to be that time around. These events are always a blast, even though I tend to have a lot to do at MagicCons and it can be a little exhausting. I leave so recharged because it's just so fun, and I can't wait to see you all in Chicago. And speaking of the community, that brings me to my last major thing, which is, of course, the community and community involvement. The Magic community is one of my favorite things in the world, and I love being part of it. Whether it's social media, dropping by stores, being on podcasts or gameplay shows, or even making videos like this one, this is all stuff I just want to do off the clock because I just love Magic so much and love being a part of this amazing community. I love hearing from and talking with all of you. Yes, sometimes this does lead to very real work things, like when I write an article for the website or make a post on social media addressing a popular topic. But a lot of the time, it's just me wanting to be there, doing stuff in the Magic community, and it's just so much fun. I love it. One of the things that I really do love about being in the community is getting to hear all your feedback, and you're pretty good about sending all that in. So to kind of bring it all together, when you ask me questions or give me feedback, kind of the amount I can directly impact it depends on how close it is to me. Let me give you some examples. Let's say there's a card design or a deck theme you really want. You want a red card that makes everybody attack you, or you want a Jund -1/-1 counters commander, which are both somewhat popular requests. Well, that is directly in my line of work. You can go and put one of those cards into a set, and yeah, maybe it won't survive, or we'll have to change a lot along the way. That kind of thing is directly what I work on and can help make happen. I'm not gonna say easily, but it's really well in my purview. I love putting these kinds of things in my back pocket, right? If there's a space in a Magic set, I'll be like, ooh, I heard something from the community. I think actually this card would be perfect right here and people would really like it. And if it doesn't work there, hey, there's always more sets to iterate on and I'll get it made eventually, I feel. Let's go one ring out further. Let's say you come to me and you're like, hey Gavin, I love Goblin King and Goblin King should clearly be a noble. It's a king. Obviously, it should be a noble. Well, I don't work on the creature types. That's editing and kind of world building's job. But I work pretty closely with those teams, so it's a lot easier for me to be able to reach out to them and talk to them about a topic like this. It is kind of connected to game design very closely, in a way. Now let's go one ring further out. Say you have feedback about a MagicCon or a secret lair or Magic Arena, something like that. Well, I know the people on these teams and I can get feedback across, but I don't work on them on a day-to-day basis. So I'm happy to send stuff over, but once I send it over, it's kind of up to them what to do with it. Like I'm not going to be working on it on a day-to-day basis. That's really their department, not as much mine. So you might be wondering, is this me saying not to give you feedback on things outside of game design? And I want to be clear, absolutely not. One thing I really love about working at Wizards and being so involved in the community is that I can help guide people's feedback to the right area. If you tell me something, I can help make sure the right people get it. So please, please, please never hesitate to tell me your feedback around anything involving Magic. I want to hear it all. Just know that depending on how close I am to it will make a difference on how much of an impact I can have on it. At the end of the day, some of it's going to be, hey, did you notice this thing? And that'll kind of be the end of the conversation. But I'll do what I can to get that feedback to the right people. And I really, really, really appreciate it everywhere I go, whether it's online or in person or however else you deliver it to me. Carrier pigeon, I guess. Thank you so much for all your notes. Phew! That is a ton, but man, I love what I get to do. Working on Magic is the best. I feel so fortunate to have this job and get to talk with all of you. And hopefully now you have a little better idea what I do too. And also, as hopefully you gathered a bit today, it's not just me and Mark Rosewater and whoever else you know at Wizards working on this. It is a huge team full of people, many of which you never see, making everything from the card design all the way to the packaging, getting it on shelf. No matter what part of Magic you see, somebody took the time to make. And I feel really fortunate to have such an amazing and brilliant team to work with. So thanks to all of them for making it happen. I hope you enjoyed this little foray into what I do every single day at work. Until next time, may you be a little bit of a wizard yourself. And remember everybody, you got this.
Mono Red, Glee Combo, and Affinity. Now Pauper continues to be quite diverse, with so many other kinds of decks being successful. From Terror to Mono White, to Elves, to Fairies, to Boggles, to Dredge, to Ponza. Well, you get the idea. There's a lot you can play with. But these